All right, so let me introduce our panelists. We've got Lori Birch. Lori Birch is a longtime lawyer. She practices up here in Collin County. She does a lot of estate planning for LGBT folks and families. She is also her company is the only company in North Texas and quite possibly the state of Texas that is certified as an LGBT business enterprise by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And so we've got Lori, then we also have Ezra Littleton. Litton, I keep messing up your name. Ezra is he works with Prudential, and he is a principal with Prudential, and what he does with them is he works on suitability and quality issues for clients of Prudential in the state of Texas and also in the state of Oklahoma. Then we've got Lauren Wynn. She is a first vice president of UBS Financial Services. She is also a certified financial planner. And then we've got Rebecca Covell, also a longtime LGBT activist attorney. She does estate planning, and she is also known as the lawyer who is not crooked and not straight. So, having said that, we're going to go ahead and start. So I'm going to start with Lori. Lori, if you would, tell us what are the main reasons someone who is LGBT would want an estate plan? And is it any different from someone who is not LGBT?
Well, my question is, why would you not want one? It's so fun to think about your death and disability and hospitalization. I mean, what's stopping you? Great question. And what I'd like to really just start with is actually a little bit to your point, is we are still celebrating the marriage equality decision, and I would emphasize really the equality piece, and that is that the LGBT community and couples are just now, like any other boring heterosexual couple, that still very much needs this planning. I like to say that there are three things that I like people to get out of their vocabulary when it comes to talking about wills and trusts and estate planning, and that is automatic, simple, and forms. And so the automatic piece is that it's been a lot of fun, actually, probably, for my fellow panelists and myself, educate our community or re-educate them. We've been fighting so long for this, and now it's like, now what? And we don't have automatic rights, just like straight married couples, to make medical decisions, visit each other in the hospital, get access to medical records, inherit property, oversee the estate or any financial decisions. The difference is, and a very important difference, is that we now have standing, and there is a presumption by law, but they're still very much up in the air. And I love this microphone. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have a really hard time giving this up. It's kind of an echo. So all that is to say is when it comes to just the fundamental planning, the first step, and the other panelists are going to talk about some other broader topics, is just having a will, having medical powers of attorney, having financial powers of attorney, medical record releases. If you remember the Terri Schiavo case in Florida a while back, she's a great example, unfortunately for her, but she was in her early 20s, so it's never too soon to put this planning together. Well, if you're under 18, I suppose it is, but that's a sidebar. And she was in a coma, and she was married to a man who was trying to make decisions, right? So now there's this perception that he should have just been able to make decisions and we should not know her name. But the fact of the matter is we do know her name because she did not have planning in place. She did not have a living will, a directive, a medical power of attorney. She didn't even have a very simple document that we have in Texas that oversees funeral and burial and cremation. And her parents did not agree with the decisions her husband was trying to make. And as such, she became a national story. It went all the way, I forget who it was. It was the one that did the hanging Chad thing in Florida, their governor or attorney general. I'm forgetting her name now, Catherine something. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much. And so it's just crazy. So I use that example to get automatic out of the vocabulary, even for our LGBT community. They're still very important to sit down with someone, not try to do this on your own, and put some very fundamental things in place. So during the most difficult times that you and your loved ones will face, can make it a little bit easier and more straightforward.
So tell everyone how you can estate plan outside of the will, outside of a will process.
So that's typically where I get the other two words that are trigger. My soul dies a little inside each time someone talks about a form or says they just need a simple will. And I know what that means, by the way. We all do. You want the cheapest thing you got, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that there's no such thing as a simple will or simple circumstances. There are many things that aren't even controlled by a will. And in fact, a lot of people, the majority of the money or assets that will be generated upon their death is not controlled by a will at all. So have fun sitting in front of Legal Doom and filling that thing out. Probably won't even be signed correctly. Got lots of great stories about that. But you may not realize that the majority of your estate is not even controlled by that. And what I mean is when it comes to life insurance, retirement, those have beneficiaries, that all preempts the will. The way you set up bank accounts, whether it's joint accounts, right of survivorship, PODs, pay on death, if you don't know what that means, that makes all of us very excited because it means you need us. So but those are all things that you need to have the counsel on to make sure that if in the most difficult times that you will face and your family will face and your loved ones will face, that the right people are in place and they will be empowered to make the right decisions for you.
Thank you. And so, Rebecca, why don't you describe for us what a trust is, why it's important, and why you might want one or not want one.
I'm happy to do that because, as a lot of you know, you can have a will and that may be fine, have powers of attorney and that may be fine, and then there may be other issues. If you have children that you want to have benefit from your estate and they're younger, or grandchildren and they're younger, and you want to ensure that they really receive the bounty that you have worked so long to build up, you might want to think about putting it in a trust where someone designated as a trustee, a fiduciary, can manage those funds for the younger beneficiary until they get to be an older age where they could properly manage it themselves. Sometimes we have blended families where you are now with a spouse who had children from another marriage and you want to ensure that kids from both of your relationships are equally benefiting from your estate should one of you pass away. A trust is a problem solver. It's a way where you can, in fact, have a say now in how your assets are going to be distributed later. You might have a business and you want to ensure that your business is protected, or you want to avoid probate and the privacy that having your assets held in a trust instead of having to go through the probate proceeding is also a good reason to think about trusts. So it's just another tool in the toolbox. In addition to having your powers of attorney and your wills, sometimes having a trust is a fabulous way to expand your ability to control what happens to your assets and ensure that your wishes are carried out.
Great, thank you. Tell us a little bit about the tax benefits or not of a trust.
Well, that's a good question. A lot of people, sometimes they'll call me and say, well, how much is a will or how much is a trust? You know, it's the bottom line. And I often say, well, okay, so how much is a car? You tell me how much a car is, and if you can answer that, then you know how much a will or a trust is going to be. It varies. It depends on your circumstances. So meet with somebody with the expertise to help you answer these proper questions so that you don't have money going to people like a lot of, you know, if you don't put these things together, a lot of times your beneficiaries get the estate when they turn 18, and that may not be a proper time. Like I mentioned earlier, when I was that age and just out of college and stuff, I spent my money on fast cars and loose women. And you may not want that to be your plan. So if you have money delayed for them until maybe it's just the fast car part or whatever it may be, you can have a say in doing this. So trust planning is really important to be a comprehensive part of your estate. And how much a trust costs or how much a will costs depends on how involved it gets. It can be a very streamlined, simple process, or it can be a complex, depending on the value of your estate. Some people think that if they move all of their assets into this trust, that they don't have to worry about taxes anymore. Well, guess what? The IRS is going to say, if you can get to it and control it, then it's going to be taxed to you, and it doesn't matter if you own it in your name individually or in the name of your trust. The good news is that the exemption before any estate tax applies now is $5.4 million per person. So the vast majority of us don't have to worry about the tax implications of having a trust anymore. If you do have an extensive estate, there are, of course, kinds of trust where we can move assets entirely out of your name, called an irrevocable trust, and then that way they aren't going to be taxed to you, but seldom does that even apply for the vast majority of my clients anymore.
Great, thank you. I'm going to briefly ask you, and probably both you and Lori, but why don't you talk just a little bit about succession planning?
Sure. You think of your will or your trust as a succession plan. It's what's happening to your assets once you're unable to control them yourselves or you've passed away. But a lot of us have businesses, and we've spent our lives building an entrepreneurial business, or maybe just, you know, renting kayaks on the weekend. It doesn't matter. This is your legacy, and you want to ensure that it has a succession plan. Think about it early, not when you're, you know, incapacitated. But there's a wonderful way that you can ensure that your assets will go to your children or benefit your children, and talking with a professional about how to identify the people who are most important, who might be a good succession plan, and making sure that they can take over my business. You can roll that strategy into your will or into your trust. You can have an agreement with people in advance, like key employees, that they are going to succeed your interest, and so you have this rollout over a period of time. All of us, and we know this from our volunteer work, all of us should be thinking about who's going to replace me and be able to do this job when I'm not here to do it, whether it's a paid job or not. And many of us, you know, once we've retired from our, you know, years behind the desk, have an encore career. And you might want to think about, how is somebody going to come behind you and succeed you in that? This is planning that should occur immediately and continuously.
Thank you. And Lori, let me just briefly ask you a little bit about prenups, post-nups, no-nups, and what are they? And
you're asking me that question?
I'm going to ask you that question this time.
Fantastic. Yes, so we live in a community property state, and that's really, really exhilarating. Anybody know what community property means? Means the minute you say your I do's, no matter who acquires that, it's 50-50. Technically, it's really not even 50-50. It's just 100% each of yours, which may not sound like a big difference to you, but from a legal standpoint, that really means a lot when you both equally have access to the whole. But there are things that you can do, particularly in light of business planning, where you can do a premarital agreement. Now, we think a lot about that when it comes to the dissolution of a relationship, but as estate planners, both Rebecca and I also like to use those in the case of death, because it is very confusing when it becomes community property versus separate property. And this is a way to go ahead and pre-designate how those assets are going to be handled. For example, individuals that get the second, third, fourth marriage or have blended families, perhaps they have assets, they want the companionship and the love, but they want to make sure that their assets, whether it's a business or just their retirement, actually goes back to their children. Well, when you say in a will or a trust, all this property goes here, I mean, I can put in my will that I give Graceland to my sister, but you know what, folks? I don't own it yet. So you can say that, but we have to figure out, well, what is that property? What is that money? And that could be really difficult to sort out. So a premarital agreement is something that can help define what is actually meant by that. And then for those who do the real doom and gloom, the family law attorneys, who are the ones who break up families, it can help when it comes to the dissolution of that. Now, if you've already said your I do's and you're thinking, oh goodness, we need this, that's where a post-nup comes into play. So you can do that. And then Covell over here likes to talk about the no-nup. So let's say, you know, marriage is great, but I'm not into that. That's not for me. That's great that all you people can go get married, but been there, done that once, and no more. So there are still ramifications of if you cohabitate with somebody, or even co-own a business, or co-own a business with somebody else. There are legal planning pieces that you can put into place to ensure, in the event of death, disability, divorce, what have you, or breaking up in this case, that you can make sure that assets, business or personal, are able to be distributed in the manner that you want.
Thank you. That's great. Lauren, I'm going to switch to you and ask you to describe for the audience, tell us why folks need a financial plan and why that's critical as we age.
Thank you for the questions, and I will try to slow it down a little bit. I can't talk as fast as these two. That was a lot of information. Bring it closer. Okay, thank you. In financial planning, a lot of people, when they talk about financial planning, they really only talk about and really only think about money management and investing. In reality is that a financial planning is a comprehensive financial planning. I like to envision it as like a tree. You have a tree, and then within a tree it has several different branches. One of those branches could be money management and investing. The other branch could be estate planning, will, and they're just financial goals that you have. The other one would be for retirement income. How much money do I need in retirement? The other branch of your tree would be, let's say, insurance. Do I have enough life insurance, long-term care, disability? The other one is education. Do I have enough money to send my kids to school? And some of you are young. Do I have enough money for myself to go to school? And for those that have grandkids, can I send my grandkids to school, elementary, college, or whatnot? So kind of envision that tree, right? So you have this comprehensive financial planning. Could I get a poll? How many of you have done a financial plan within the last year? Okay, that's great. The Certified Financial Planning Board, it's an actual board, and they did a survey recently here. They said that only 31% of the overall household has done a financial planning, which is really unfortunate because, in my opinion, the financial planning, comprehensive financial planning, you should have done that probably once you get out of college. But nobody talks about that. And the reason why that you would want to do that is because that you have money. Now that you come out of college, what you do is you have a job. And when you make money, you're kind of just spending it all over the place. With Rebecca, it's on, fast car and fast woman, right? Or men. But you have debt. You have other obligations that you need to earmark for that.
You weren't talking about me.
No, I wasn't. And that was me, really, that was me. And the reason why that the number is so low is because people feel like financial planning is really only for those that have money. And it's not true, because why do you think they have money? It's because they have the education. They were advised to get a financial planning done in advance so that they could build wealth and avoid financial pitfalls early on. The other reason, too, is that a lot of people feel like they're not entitled to a financial planning because they didn't have the education or someone advised them to do so. And then it kind of just compounds. And then by the time they do it, they feel like they're too late to do it. But to me, it's never too late to do a financial planning. So for those that don't have a financial planning in place, never thought about it, UBS is a great support of the LGBT community. And so when they found out that I was on this board, they're offering free comprehensive financial planning for those that are interested. I have a list somewhere, a sign-up sheet that you could do that. And we do that for, it's complimentary. So it's very important that you get that in place, because if you have debt, if you have other financial goals in place, that you want to achieve, you have to have a financial plan so you can see those goals on paper. And if you don't plan, you're not going to get to your financial goals. We all have financial goals. By having it on paper, you can be able to track it, to be able to achieve that. There are ways that you can do that. You can do it online. There are softwares you can do that. If you work, you have 401k, you can do that within your 401k retirement. They have a retirement software. I know that you've seen some of those. Have you all seen within your 401k? So you can do that. However, that is very linear. That really just takes one branch into consideration, that is retirement income. The other is that you can also find a financial advisor, right? The financial advisor can come in and help you identify your goals and say, are these goals realistic for you to achieve? And what are the priorities? If you have a debt that's charging you 8% in interest, you want to take that down, because by investing, you're not going to be able to find an investment that's going to give you an 8% in the long run to recoup the interest that you're paying out for your student loans, your credit card, whatnot.
So, Lauren, let
Yes.
me interrupt you just quickly. Can you briefly describe to the folks here what long-term care insurance is and why or why not you should have it?
Okay, great question. So a part of your financial tree, one of the branch of your financial tree is the insurance need. Nowadays, statistics shows that people are living much longer, especially female, that are living longer. And if you're not prepared to be in retirement, because once you're in retirement, the income, if you're no longer working, the income is gone except for Social Security, maybe, right? And that might not be enough for you. So while you can, long-term care could come in and help you assist with your health care needs. A statistic was shown that 1 out of 7 or 8 people by the time that they reach the age of 65 will need long-term care. And that means that you're healthy now, but if you're not able to bathe yourself, feed yourself, transport, things like that, then you're going to have somebody to help you to come in to help you do those kind of things. Cook for you, go to the grocery store for you. What are those costs? And if you can't afford that, you could be able to at least think about long-term care insurance to then come in and assist you with your expenses later on.
Thank you. And Ezra, let's turn to you for a second. Okay. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what they could be doing right now in the context of their employers to maximize their retirement goals over time?
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. The challenges that everyone faces are similar, but with the LGBT community specifically, there's some uniqueness to that, as you heard earlier this morning with Bart's presentation, right? So because of that, it's really, really important that you have a focus on gathering your resources and augmenting them. So for example, many of us, if you work at a company, there may be benefits there that are available to you. So there could be group life insurance, there could be disability, and of course a 401k or some type of savings plan. Those are the most common benefits. But however, when working with clients, we find that they're not fully taking advantage of these. So even if they are taking advantage of them, they may not provide enough to meet their needs. So for example, with the life insurance, it may be something very basic that's not enough to replace your income to your spouse or to your partner. It may not be enough money to provide for children to go to college, or for your partner, if you have one, to be able to save for their own retirement. So it's very critical to go through the planning process that Lauren was describing to make sure that what you have in place, you're taking advantage of it, and that you have enough. So as it relates to disability, that's another one that is a very, very critical issue. I mean, the number one asset that we all have actually is the ability to earn an income. So when people go through a serious illness or an injury, many times they're not dead. They're unable to work, at least for a period of time. So that can be devastating, obviously, cause bankruptcies and all sorts of terrible things that nobody wants to think about. So taking advantage of the employer plan is one step, but then adding to that, specifically with your own plan, whether you have it at work or not, the benefits from that disability plan, for example, will be taxable if it's coming from your employer. It should not normally be taxable if you're paying for it, so it's important to augment that. And then, for example, with the retirement planning, people have a 401k, they may have a simple IRA, but we find they're not contributing the correct amounts. Again, this is where planning comes into place, because you have to know what potentially it is you're saving for, right? If you don't have an idea of what your expenses are today, how can you know what they may be in the future? Most people are going to need roughly 80% of their income in retirement, the money they're making today, and that's much higher than most people expect that it's going to be. Additionally, with the retirement plans at work, many people are not even making the right choices for the investments that they have inside of them. So again, it's critical to sit down. Don't do this by yourself, all right? Don't do this by yourself. Find someone that you trust, that you feel comfortable with, and work with that person to help you. It could be someone at Lauren's firm, at mine, or any place else. Just make sure that you're doing that. I'll give you an example. When it comes to income planning, right? People think, well, I'm going to spend all my time on growing my assets, accumulating my wealth, putting money in my 401k. Well, now what, right? I'm retired. How can I make this money last? How much can I take out every year? So these are things, again, that people don't often think about. It reminds me of what Rebecca said earlier. People don't do well with large sums of money, regardless of their age, right? Because now that I'm taking a paycheck from myself, how much can I pay myself and not run out of money when I'm 75 or 80 years old, okay? Because everyone's living longer, that actually is the largest risk that we have to face, is the risk of longevity, of outliving our savings. And it's even more critical because employers are moving away from pension plans, and the burden is now more upon us, more than ever, to save our own money and plan for the retirement that we all want to be able to have, and then eventually, of course, age with dignity, which I think everybody would appreciate.
So tell us just briefly, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions from the audience. But tell us briefly a little bit about annuities,
Okay.
and why you might want to buy one, whether or not they're asset protected, and go
Okay.
ahead.
All right, great. Well, annuities sometimes can get a bad rap. I mean, they're sometimes improperly used. There is a place for them, all right? Particularly when it comes to a person that's a high income earner. You're already maxing out your 401k. Maybe you can't contribute to an IRA of any kind. So a non-qualified annuity could be an excellent tax-deferred vehicle to save additional money, and it is protected if you're sued. So, for example, if you own a business, it might be a nice advantage to have that. If you're receiving bonus income in chunks, you can put large amounts of money into these things at one time, which is great. But really, they're designed as income-producing vehicles. So they're designed and created with the intention of providing a stream of income that you cannot outlive. You can structure it in many ways to pay yourself one amount and maybe your spouse or another person afterwards. So that's really where they're most relevant and important to be used, is near or in retirement, because there's really no other more efficient tool that you can use to maximize the income.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to open it up to all of y'all if you have any questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure that we left enough time. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Yes, sir.
Okay, because I know, different states are like, growing up in maybe Texas here in California, and it's like, I'll pay how many XYs and stuff. It's like, why? And it's like Texas has no alimony, and I guess it's the only state that doesn't. But not that I'm that worried about that, but like there's different rules in like community property. Is community property in every state, and is it such that if you own, say, a home outright, then you marry someone, does the stuff become community property over a length of time? It isn't really like that, right? It's what you earn while you're together, or of course that's why you should have period post nuts, but how does that work if you own, whatever, investment accounts, property, and then you marry with someone and you don't prenuptially or something?
Did you say marry up?
Yeah.
I'll just take good marriage.
So here's what I'm going to do is let me let Lori and Rebecca briefly address that, and then if y'all will indulge me for a minute, not that this is about me, and I can talk to you a little bit about what informal marriage is or common law marriage, because Texas is a common law marriage state. There's only about 9 states that have that, so you might find yourself in a situation where you are married to somebody, or could be construed to be married as to someone, and therefore accumulating what's called community property, meaning that both of you own all of that property from the time that you began living together in the state of Texas. So, Lori, I'll let you go first.
I'll answer very quickly, because we are bleeding into the area of family law versus estate planning law, and Shelley is very well versed at being able to discuss that. But no, not every state's community property. I believe that there's about 9. Within that, each one has their own laws that govern community property. It can be very complicated, because anything that you have going into a marriage is your separate property. However, income off separate property can become community property. So there's a lot of nuances there. Bottom line is to see a professional to help guide you through that. So all in that there, if Rebecca wants to chip in, or if Shelley wants to take the more of the nuanced family law issues there.
Rebecca, go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's essentially it. Anything that you acquire during your marriage is considered community. Anything that you brought into the marriage, anything you inherit, anything you get by gift is considered your separate property. But the thing is, if you take that inheritance and you deposit it in the joint account, you have commingled it with your now community assets, and then it loses its separate character. So that really is, it's a huge minefield. Texas law, the family code, really hasn't done us any favors over the years. And a lot of LGBT couples who are used to having my bank account, of course I want to use her bank account, and then our bank account, and it's all my money, might be just shocked when they find out when they get married that there are in fact rules that say, no, actually that's not how it is. So community property is something that really requires you to think long and hard if you're about to get married, what the impact of that is going to be. And maybe you want to opt out of all that, and you opt out with a premarital agreement, a prenup as they're called. And that's an agreement in contemplation of marriage where you're saying anything we accumulate during the marriage is going to stay my separate property or your separate property, rather than get into this big windmill mix in the middle. And sometimes when you're about to inherit or you have a business and you're already married, then you can do what's called a partition or postnup agreement, where again you want to opt out of the Texas Family Code. And our rules are different from other states. Even those that are also community property states do it a little differently than we do it in Texas, of course. So you want to be sure that if you are domiciled in Texas, that you have documents that are in fact Texas specific, not only about your marriage, but about your wills, your trusts, and other estate planning documents. They all need to be state specific. And then of course if you don't want to move up to that that altar and get married, and you just want to live with somebody and just say we'll just cohabit and you keep your bank account and I keep mine, are shocked if something happens to one of them and they find out, oh, well, we think that we were in fact married. We agreed that we were living together as spouses, and so we were married, and so they want to make a claim against the estate, for example. And this happens more regularly than you might realize. And that's why people who don't want to be married would be smart to agree not to be married, and that's your no-nup. And then, Shelley, what happens, in fact, you were going to mention it, if they don't have a no-nup, they haven't gotten married, and then somebody makes a claim and say, actually, I thought we were married?
Sure, right. So Texas has what I call common law marriage, and we're one of about 9 states that do. And I think going back to what Rebecca said and also Lori said, remember, guys, we are the only state in the union that was once its own country. And so therefore, from a legal standpoint, whether you're doing estate planning or family law, we're a little bit different. And so I'm gonna jump just quickly. LegalZoom and anything where you want to go online and do some estate planning, I'm going to implore you not to do that. You might save yourself a little bit of money by doing that, but when you get into court, if you have to probate that will, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be right, and I'm going to have to bring in more witnesses and prove more things to get that will proved up. So there are certain things about Texas. So go, and not that I'm tooting our own horns, but go and talk to a lawyer. It's well worth the money that you spend up front. So common law marriage, what is it? There are a bazillion myths about this in our state, but what you have to do is you and your partner, whether you're straight or gay, have to have a present agreement to be married to each other right now. And common law marriage arose out of the fact that we lived on farms, we weren't close to cities, and so people would get together, and so you have a present agreement to be married right now. So that's the first part, an agreement. The second part is you have to live in the state of Texas together. A lot of people say, oh, well, you have to live together for 5 years or 10 years. There is no amount of time that you have to, it could be a month. It could be, you look at the fact, it's very, very fact specific. So you have to live together in the state of Texas. And then the third part of it is what I call the representation or the holding out. And so how is it that you hold yourself out to the rest of the world? Do you hold yourself out as wife and wife, or husband and wife, or husband and husband? And when I say holding out, do you go out and do you get a joint bank account? Do you get loans together? Do you adopt dogs together as parents? Do you call your husband or your husband to your friends? Do you, if you're active in our community, do you sponsor? Do you go to HRC events or other events and sponsor them together as a couple. So it's very, very fact specific. And so in Texas, you might be living with someone, calling them your partner. Maybe you had a holy union ceremony back in, say 2000, and you have conducted your life as if you were married. Well, you may very well be common law married, and that's what's happening right now, as you're seeing across the courts in our state, where folks are now breaking up. Now we can get married, and they're saying, oh my goodness, and they don't want to be together anymore. And so then one spouse is coming in and saying, we were common law married, and everything that we acquired from year 2000 forward is community property. And so I get half of what you earned, and you get half of what I earned, and I get half of your debt, and you get half of my debt. And so that's what the common law marriage is. Does that answer your question? So we still got a couple of minutes left. We went a little bit faster today. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that I hope will be helpful. So I'm an attorney. I have hired an attorney and paid money to an attorney to do my estate plan, and I have hired a financial planner and paid money to that planner. And I think it can feel intimidating to think that we're going to get this done. I sat on it for years at one point in my life, but I have a son, and I guarantee you that any fear ahead of time, it becomes so diminished by the peace of mind that you get by doing this. I can go out there and get hit by a bus, and he is taken care of. Hopefully that won't happen today, but I'm just saying, if there's any fear that you're living with around that, any single one of you on the panel can take care of us and have in our community, and they are bound by their ethical code to keep a confidentiality, which is important to all of us. We're talking about our money and our futures. So if there's a fear factor, it will be taken care of. And when you leave any one of their offices and sit in your car, I felt like I could breathe for the first time for months after I had that stuff done. So it is so worth the investment, no matter what it is. And it may be significant, it may not be. It's not mine to choose what the level is. It does cost money, but you will be taking care of your life. So I'm giving them all a plug, or all of us a plug, to take that power for yourself and get it done. It's so much peace of mind. It's amazing.
She was not paid for that endorsement.
Just a couple of specific questions when you're having your will drawn up. Do you have to have language in there if you want someone specifically excluded, if the will is contested, and if you have animals?
So here's what we're about out of time, and so what I would say is come and talk to any one of us offline, and we're more than happy to answer that for you. I also want to say to everyone here, we've got roughly 60% of Americans do not save enough money for retirement. And so, and especially in our community, that's even more critical because we don't have the support systems. I think you heard Bart talk about that earlier. So I implore you, like CC Cox just said, it's really the money that you spend up front with a lawyer gives you a peace of mind. It gets your family comfortable with what your decisions are, and you save money over time so that your family's not coming in and cleaning up issues when they're under stress after you have passed away. So that's my 2 cents. The other thing I was going to say is thank you so much for being here. Please grab any of us in the hallway if you have any questions. If you think anything's important, really what we're trying to do is foster a discussion as we go forward in the future. And so please don't hesitate to reach out to the coalition so that we can start getting the needs of our community met. Thank you.